It's Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knodt.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a bit toasty in Stockton. I'm sure most of you know that. We at 5:52 p.m., shortly before the beginning time of this show, it was a mere 109 degrees outside. The original forecast had that temperature aimed at 4 o'clock, so I don't know what it was at 4 o'clock. But it was no problem. A little bit of walking, a little bit of RTD bus, and we're here ready to roll. And a little bit of ice water here. Unfortunately, I don't have my usual pre-show meal today, which is wonderful coffee at the Impresso Coffee House in the Art Deco lobby of the Stockton Royal Theater, and a pastry, because unfortunately there were stunning developments on the Miracle Mile this past week. So I'll talk a little bit about that. There'll be more to come in the next couple of weeks. And so generally speaking, we'll let that play through, but we will recap that a little bit. But I do want to start off with some really good things that we can talk about. And of course, the show is Stockton Alive, ! And so we want to talk about, and we always do want to talk about those things that really bring us out and make things active and exciting here. So first and foremost, on a somewhat cooler day, but pretty warm, it was, I think, a triple-digit day or close to it. I was at the stock market this past Saturday, which is just up north of the Miracle Mile at Caldwell Park, which is the wonderful park that's just on the south end of the grocery store that has at different times been a Lucky's and a Save Mart. What is that store today, Dustin? I forget which one it is.
Well,
I think it's a Save Mart right now.
Where's it again?
The grocery store that's on Pacific Avenue near Alpine, just north of Caldwell Park, where the stock market.
Yeah, Save Mart.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a Save Mart currently. Mm-hmm. And there's been many times over the years I've been to that store. Being the old dinosaur that I am, I remember much smaller grocery stores. There's an independent store on Acacia Street called the A&L Market, and there's a couple other stores similar to that. There's one called the Family Meat Market on Buena Vista, and I think it's Lucerne, I believe it's the cross street over by the Miracle Mile. If you see those neighborhood stores that maybe have 4 aisles and they're maybe 75 feet long, when I was a kid, those were called supermarkets because they were supermarkets and they were bigger than what you were used to. And the supermarkets invented the idea of taking a grocery cart down the aisle and picking your own things off the shelves and then going and paying for them. Then we went to discount markets. And when I was a kid, they used to actually give these things called trading stamps, which are the two. One that I remember is Blue Chip, and the other one was, I think, Green Stamps was the other one. S&H Green Stamps, that's right. And you could redeem those for appliances like vacuum cleaners and radios and things later on. Gas stations used to give out those stamps, too. It'd be something equivalent today to having a Groupon coupon, I guess. But in any event, discount markets were then succeeded by the, I'm trying to think what they called them now. There was once a nickname. But anyway, we'll call it a big box grocery store. Something like Pack and Save. And I don't think Pack and Save even exists anymore, but that was the big trendy thing in the 80s and 90s. And now we've got essentially super Walmart grocery stores and huge Target grocery stores. And we got Winco's the biggest one that I know of that is basically exclusively a grocery store. Having said all that, we'll get back to the original point, which was the stock market. Mm-hmm. I just thought, every time anytime you come on the air with me, you always wind up with a little bit of history and anecdotal information. But most people would be shocked to realize how much bigger the markets are today than they once were, and the ones that were called supermarkets. So the stock market is out on Caldwell Park, which is on the north end of the Miracle Mile. It's just a little bit south. It's on Pacific, but it's just a little bit south of Alpine. And it's a wonderful, nice family park, and it's just the right size for the stock market, or seems to be, which has, I don't know, about 40 pop-up booths. The whole idea of the stock market in its original form was a pop-up market, I think they called it. Mm-hmm. And the very first one, which was experimental, was in the Newberry building downtown.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing to think it started in the Newberry building.
Then it moved to Miracle Mile last year.
Yeah. First of all, it moved up to what is now the Sycamore.
Oh, yeah.
And in the original parking lot, they were crammed full with maybe 22 or 23 vendors. Mm-hmm. One thing they did have there, though, because it was an enclosed thing with a fence and they could limit attendance or admission, I guess, is they did have alcohol sales at the original stock markets. But they always had some little traders doing the food stuff and the outdoor food type vendors. They had, I think, 4 of them there, but they outgrew it. In fact, they actually extended into the parking lot that was created after the fire of the Hotel Earl. Even then, it wasn't really big enough. Unfortunately, we won't go into it today, but unfortunately, it was a contractual thing that came up, and they decided to move. And then you're right, they did. Was it 2 or 3 on the Miracle Mile?
I think it was like the rest of the year on the Miracle Mile, or not rest of the year, but best of the
I
stock
can't remember if
market
it was
season.
2 or 3 that were held on the Miracle Mile.
I think it was 3.
I think it was 3, and it was pretty successful.
Yeah.
Although the first one was in fall, I think, of last year,
and
it
they
was
shut
hot
down
as
the
blazes.
They shut down half the
Yeah,
mile.
they did have to shut down the street. Unfortunately, that was one is an expensive proposition.
Yes, it is.
2, everybody was on hot, well, not necessarily hot all the time, but on hard black asphalt, and there was not that many places to sit down. They had some, but the point was it was on asphalt, and it wasn't a real scenic looking market, even though it was in a nice setting. I mean, the Miracle Mile is a nice setting.
I think, Caldwell Park's the best.
But getting to Caldwell Park seems to have been the turning point to getting it to work and now fulfill its real mission, which is the stock market's mission was originally, of course, to help revitalize downtown Stockton. And it did do that, actually, when it was open down there. It actually was, I think, a tipping point in some of the more recent investment in downtown Stockton. Maybe if the stock market had not been successful, we might not have a cast iron trading company or a Channel Brewing Company, which we're going to get to that in a little bit. But in any event, it was extremely successful, and it proved once and for all, at least that the newer generation isn't scared of going to downtown Stockton.
No.
Which is much safer than most parts of Stockton, by the way. And I could even, both in real actuality and in statistics, it's safer. Some people just refuse to believe that, but there's ostriches everywhere. People just stick their head in thyme and sand, and away they go, and that's all they know. But in any event, though, the stock market is a spectacular event now, and I enjoyed walking around. It's on nice, green, luscious grass. It's in a park setting, which means the kids can play while the adults shop.
I saw your post about it on Saturday.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And then there was great music. Wonderful entertainer there. And the only thing I was a little... One of my favorite coffee vendors wasn't there. I guess maybe they figured with this hot weather, maybe it wasn't...
it was a hot weekend.
There was another one, though. Another local coffee vendor that was very good. Unfortunately, towards the end, I got kind of in a hurry to leave, and I had a lot of stuff I was carrying around, so I didn't go back. They were brewing coffee when I went by, and I didn't get back for a cup of coffee.
Interesting.
And they were also serving... real ice cream, but I didn't get a chance to go check that out either. But anyway, I'm glad that they were there. I think the name of that coffee vendor is Terra Coffee, and I mentioned them because I want to be talking about them briefly as part of a big event that's coming up this Thursday night in downtown Stockton. But in any event, the stock market was wonderful. I overspent my budget as I usually do. What I try to buy there, and I make this a big point, is I try to get locally made or made in USA or Stockton-made items. And especially if they're handmade, which almost anything made in Stockton is handmade. There's not a lot of manufacturing here in that type. But you can always find handmade jewelry, handmade leather. You'll find some homemade clothes. You'll find other clothes that are just real unique boutique type things. And so I found quite a few good things there. I bought some homemade jams and jellies from some vendor who made up this stuff in Lodi.
Ooh, interesting.
I think off their own garden or their own farm or something.
I love homemade jelly.
And then I found one where the actual name of the product is Made in a Kitchen. And actually it was from the in-season people that are on Harding. And they have special green dinners. In fact, they have a green dinner coming up again very soon. I missed the last one. And the idea of the in-season is it's either grown in their own gardens or it's hand-grown, organic type, all fresh produce, fruits, with no kind of commercialism or no pesticides or chemicals or anything used on it. That's the whole idea. And their meals are supposed to be super fresh, green, and healthy. And they're served in a luxurious setting, I've been told. I haven't had a chance to go to one yet. But the organization was in season on Harding. And they're becoming a local kind of institution now in Stockton. So the stock market was a great success. It drew a lot of people. Again, there's food crafts, there's handicrafts, there's jewelry. Now, 2 things I happened to buy, for example. I bought a San Francisco Giants bow tie for my dog. And then I bought a world champion Golden State Warriors scarf for my other dog. We have 3 pets, unfortunately. We have a cat and 2 dogs.
What kind of dogs, if I may ask?
One dog is a little black poodle, and
Nice.
it's got too much hair. It needs to have a haircut. It's
Oh.
just a bundle. It's a little furball bundle of hair. I can't imagine how warm that thing is right now. And then the other one's a Chihuahua, which is always shivering. I assume it's pretty happy now with 109 degrees.
And which dog got which?
The Chihuahua got the scarf because it's always cold and it can wear something big like that, or I mean something wrapped like that. The other one reluctantly is wearing the bow tie because the bow tie is clipped right onto the bottom of the collar. And so far it hasn't clawed it off or anything. The poodle does not like to wear anything.
Yeah, I'm a Dodgers fan.
And then we have a cat too, and
Ooh,
the
nice.
cat's a big furry cat. But I didn't get anything for it right now. I don't think it would want to wear anything, but it's also really furry. I mean, it's fluffy furry. I don't think that anything would. I think it would look better just to leave it alone. So the stock market, like I said, and that's I believe it's every month on the third Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
And so there's
third
another
Saturday.
Or what did I say? Thursday?
Yeah.
I did say third. I'm sorry. It's the third Saturday of every month. That's correct. And so the next one's about a month from now.
So yeah, July.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date, but whatever the third Saturday is in July, and it'll be at Caldwell Park. I think that's, at least for the foreseeable future, is probably their permanent home now. So
around July 15th, it's always one of those weekends with the.
as a matter of fact, I believe that's it. I believe
Yeah.
it is July 15th because I had a flyer in my hand the other day. Then, of course, all of us here at KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM to be, when we have our wonderful tower.
Very
Excuse me.
soon, I hope.
have our wonderful tower, because that's what we're going to talk about briefly. After many great tower up events at the Ave here on the Miracle Mile, with the wonderful hosting and gracious setup by Kevin Hernandez, then of course we ventured to downtown Stockton, and we were at the Channel Brewing Company.
My favorite new place.
That's right, your favorite new place. That's right. You go to Trivia on Tuesdays, right?
Trivia Tuesday tomorrow night. We're up by 2 points.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Against Carrie McNichol and her group.
Oh, that's some tough competition.
I know, yeah. So.
And of course, Carrie, as always, was at the stock market.
Yes, with the San Joaquin Bike Coalition.
Exactly.
I saw that.
And the Bike Coalition sets up bike racks for people who can park their bikes there and have them watched securely while they're at the event.
That's very interesting to me.
That's very nice. Of course, I walked to the event and then rode the Route 40 Metro Express back to near my house and then walked home.
Nice.
Today, to get here, because of the timing of my trip here from downtown, I actually caught the Route 61, which ultimately winds its way through Country Club and Robin Hood and all the way to the mall. I rode it to Harding and then walked over. And so, but usually I ride the Route 40 Metro Express to do the show. But the timing didn't work out quite right for me, so I rode the Route 61. When you ride transit, you always have a plan B or C. But anyway, so the Tower Up event, we should talk a little bit about what makes the Channel Brewing Company important and unique in its current form. First of all, it is a real microbrewery.
It is.
They actually brew the beer right there, unlike BJ's on Pacific, where they truck it in from Sacramento and pretend as if somehow they got a brewery there. These people actually brew it right then and there. And not only that, but they're only brewing their own brands.
Yes.
I don't think they even sell any of the brands,
Nope,
right?
they're licensed states. They have to make every
Okay.
beer there.
So every beer you will get there is fresh. Do they bottle anything, or is it all draft?
Nope, all
That's what I
all
thought.
out of the tap.
That's what I thought. So every beer you get at the Channel Brewing Company is fresh draft beer out of the tap.
They even have root beer. Sorry to.
And I was just going to say,
Okay.
they do have cans of soda, though, which is nice.
Oh, nice.
But you're also saying they brew root beer, right?
Yes, they do brew root beer. Yeah, yes, they do.
I have to try that because I love root
Governor
beer.
Don here loves it.
I have to try that
Yes.
because I grew up on A&W root
Yeah.
beer. When there were still A&W stands around. Now, of course, you find a few of them now merged with Taco Bell or Kentucky Fried Chicken or something.
Which, owned by the Yum Corporation, which is locally from Lodi. I
Oh,
believe, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
A&W.
And A&W originated in Sacramento, but the first drive-in was Lodi. though.
Okay, yeah, that's what I
Lodi's
thought.
is the original one, or charter one, or whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, since we mentioned that, we'll give you just a tiny history lesson. A&W root beer led to the whole Marriott hotel chain.
Did it?
Yeah, it
Wow.
actually did.
Okay.
A guy from Salt Lake City, and I don't remember something Marriott, the
Yeah.
original Marriott. He also was one of the first car rental guys in the United States. He was quite the entrepreneur, obviously.
Nice.
So he gets A&W. He comes to Sacramento, and it's a hot day, and he stumbles into A&W root beer. This is like 1918 or 1919. A&W stands for Allen and Wright, by the way.
I always thought that. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And their favorite logo, which they still don't have, they still have this thing with the U.S. A&W splashed across kind of this map of the United States. The original A&W logo was this round thing that looked something like a dartboard with an arrow. And it said, A&W root beer hits the spot. I still love that logo. I still wish they'd bring it back. I think you see it in several different posters and different displays at the Lodi drive-in, which, of course, is done the way it's supposed to be. It's a drive-in with car hops.
Was it John Willard Marriott?
Probably.
Yes.
So anyway, he was renting cars, but he also got A&W root beer. But he went back to Washington, D.C. in the early 20s.
That's him.
And he convinced them to ship the syrup or whatever it is, the powder, whatever goes into sodas, all the way to Washington, D.C., and he opened up some stores there. Now, this was in summertime.
Okay.
Then he gets to, like, September, and he puts it in order. And the people say, oh, we're sorry. We shut down for the winter. He says, why do you do that? Well, it's cold. People don't want to buy root beer in the winter. Now, this is early 20s, mind you. He says, you sell it, you ship it to me, and I'll sell it. So he started a bunch of little restaurants called hot shops, and he specifically sold hot and spicy food, including chili, and to drum up the thirst for A&W root beer. And it was wildly successful. I don't think there's any hot shops left in Washington, D.C., but this is one of the first chains really in America. But it was just apparently always local in Washington. It didn't grow bigger like Howard Johnson or White Castle or some of the other famous chains of the East Coast. But significantly, he managed eventually to open up a hot shop near what was then known as the National Airport. It's now Reagan National Airport or Reagan International Airport. And over time, they noticed there people were buying their meals and then taking them onto the airplanes.
Interesting.
So he invented the airline tray meal.
Wow.
Except much higher quality than what you would think of today.
What a great business.
And this was in the 40s, something like 48 or 49. And so the Marriott Corporation you know today was built essentially on tray air meal, supplying airlines to do tray meals. And then the son, whoever he is, I don't know if the father ever ventured this far or not, I can't remember, but then the son decided to take the huge profits that were rolling in and buy a few hotels, and then the rest is history.
Based in Bethesda, Maryland.
But all of that starts with A&W root beer.
Okay, wow, nice. So back to Channel Brewing.
Yes,
now.
Channel Brewing Company. So back to Channel Brewing, where they brew real root beer. Channel Brewing Company, only original fresh draft beers. Okay. They don't apparently have a license to sell wine. And as you mentioned, they don't have any bottled beer, so it's all fresh beer. They don't have food yet, but I believe they're working on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe.
But the point is, they are exactly what they're supposed to be. A microbrewery is supposed to sell you fresh, unique, homemade, crafted beers, and that's what they do.
And at a good price, too.
It's a great price. They charge very fair prices, and it always comes, well, generally speaking, it always comes in a frosted real mug or a glass.
Yes.
That's how it's also supposed to be done. So draft beer in a frosted glass is the way beer is supposed to be consumed, and that's how it's done all over Europe, especially in Germany. And it just isn't the same drinking it any other way. But it's a remarkably plain place. They just have wooden, kind of like picnic tables that are lacquered and beautifully done, but they have board games.
Yes, I love the look of it, too.
It does. It actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Actually, A&W's used to have picnic tables also when they were back when the drive-in days, and car hops and drive-in days. But so it was McDonald's by that invented the plastic interiors that you now kind of take for granted in any fast food. And at the time, that was thought to be very innovative. I don't want to knock them on that. But anyway, so the Channel Brewing Company is not only do they deliver what they promise and is their main objective, but they also perfectly complement the business next door, the new cute little restaurant, the Cast Iron Trading Company, which does have wine, by the way, and other kinds of beers, including specialized canned beers and craft beers. And so you can get food from the one and go to the other, or you can get wine from the one and go to the other. But going back and forth, they complement each other perfectly. And they also cross-market each other, which is great. Now, also, and one reason I wanted to bring this up and talk about Channel Brewing Company is they are willing, as is Cast Iron Trading Company, to cross-market other businesses downtown. As people are starting to know, I actually love the Deliberation Room, which is a relatively new lounge and bar in downtown Stockton.
Still have to go there with you, Nate.
Yes, that's right. And it opened Friday, December 30th. I was the first ever happy hour customer there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Just as I was once the first season ticket holder of the Stockton Arena.
Were you?
But yeah, I was.
Whoa, we have to get into that one day.
Oh, okay. I thought I talked about that
no,
in show one.
I've never heard of that.
Oh,
Wow.
I guess I didn't talk about this.
Wow.
So we'll do it another time. I won't go there today.
So you were Dan Chapman's first big...
No, well, actually, it's California Cougars.
Yeah, I believe Dan was the president for that also.
Well, he was president of the Thunder.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I never knew that.
So there's a whole story of that, of course. But we'll go
Stockton
another
sports
time.
history with Nate Knodt.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, there are times when they have live music at the Cast Iron Trading Company and or as we know, the Channel Brewing Company. And usually their music will end around 9 o'clock or 9:30. It doesn't go real late, but they'll send people to Deliberation Room. The first night the Deliberation Room was ever open, which was Friday, December 30th, which was the day before New Year's Eve. And they were going to stay open late that night. I know my wife and I and some friends were there, and just as we were leaving, a wave of people came in from the Cast Iron Trading Company. And this is not that unusual. So it's great. You know, right now you need a rising tide to lift all boats.
Yes.
And so that's good that they're doing that. So I want to give all these people credit for doing this. This is really wonderful. Now, I do want to talk about the Tower Up event for a couple reasons. First of all, there's an incredible, dynamic young performer there. And I don't remember if I brought her business card or remember her name with me or not.
If not, I got you, Nate.
Oh, go ahead. Tell me who it was.
Corinne O'Connell. Her
Yes.
stage name goes by Corinne O.C.
Okay.
And she's a local girl from Lodi.
Yes.
And she's a San Francisco State grad. So
I
she's
didn't know she was San Francisco State.
Yeah, she's a Gator.
If I had a chance to talk, I didn't want to consume any of her time the other night because I got to say hello a couple times. But San Francisco State is the other preeminent broadcast school along with Chico State, which is where I went.
So, yes, San Francisco State. And now she's trying to get big into music, and that's her goal, her objectivity. That's what she wants to do.
And she has a great voice.
Yeah, she does.
She has the talent to go big. It's just a question of whether she is persistent enough and is lucky enough for somebody to discover her and the right things fall into place. There's just little doubt in my mind she has the talent, though. She has a great voice, and may not get this right musically, but she has, I think, ability to go up and low with the octaves.
Yes.
She got up pretty high a few times, and she went down. So she has a good range with her voice. Her voice has a very strong sound to it. She articulates the words beautifully, and you can hear you can understand what she's singing. There's a lot of energy in her voice and passion and all that. So she's got all that.
And she was playing with her father the other night too. So
yes. And so it was just wonderful, and she did a great job. And, of course, she actually lives now in San Francisco.
Yes, she commutes back and forth between Lodi and San Francisco.
Okay.
Well, she lives in both. So.
And one of the things that was nice, though, she seemed to genuinely enjoy performing in downtown Stockton.
Yes.
I mean, she seemed to really be happy and proud to be there, which was great.
And, excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, go ahead.
When you bring that up, it makes me think of Austin, Texas, because Austin, Texas is known for that. The city limits and all that stuff. So having a good downtown vibe is very important, I think, for making Stockton downtown revitalize again.
No, absolutely. And Austin, of course, is a college town with the University of Texas, and the capital. But I mean, it is true though that Austin did make itself an entertainment center.
Yes. Another
Texas city that essentially created itself and came out of nowhere. They did it with a combination, and we mentioned all this talk about beer. That did it by branding beer and by bringing in a lot of sports is Round Rock, Texas. That city is essentially a self-made, marketed city. It's now, I think they call themselves the minor league sports capital of the United States, and they have the Round Rock beer.
Round Rock Express is a baseball team they have there.
And it even has a pretty good population now.
Yes.
It's actually a surprisingly large city now, considering that most people probably never really heard of it. They may have heard of the beer and not appreciated the beer's named after the town, and that the town has achieved this fame. It's kind of the sports version of what you have in music with Branson, Missouri.
I've been to Branson, Missouri.
You have been?
Yes, my grandfather was born in Missouri.
Oh, my goodness.
And raised till he was in Blount in middle school and moved out to Whittier, California, which was the home of Richard Nixon.
Yeah, that's right, Whittier, California. That's right.
Yeah,
Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Yes, my grandfather grew up in a small town called Bolivar, Missouri, around there. Or Lebanon, Missouri, but yeah.
I've heard of Lebanon.
Yeah.
Isn't Lebanon the home of Rush Limbaugh?
I have to double check that. I don't have no clue.
I know he's from that area somewhere.
Sorry.
One of those little towns in that general area. Of course, Rush Limbaugh hit it big at KFBK Sacramento.
He did. Everybody forgets that.
Along with Don Imus,
Yes.
whatever his name was.
I believe Imus was also in Stockton at one time.
He was. He was at KJOY at one time.
By the way,
KJOY.
yeah, Round Rock is a little about north of Austin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it kind of almost a suburb or bedroom community
Yeah,
of
it's
Austin?
almost
Okay.
about
I didn't
30
know.
minutes north.
I have to admit, I never really looked up to see what it was geographically. That makes sense, though. So they're sucking in the business from Austin and the University of Texas crowd, as well as now becoming nationally famous for sports and their beer. And I know that was used as an example. If you remember that Stockton had the banners that said "Celebrate," a consultant who consulted to Round Rock, Texas, came to Stockton, and that's what his recommendation was for Stockton, was to celebrate what we have, which is a pretty good idea. I can't say I don't think the slogan ever really caught on. I don't think it really ever grabbed people. I know the Downtown Stockton Alliance tried very hard to promote that, and what is now known as Visit Stockton worked pretty hard to promote that. Now, Visit Stockton, of course, which used to be the Convention and Visitors Bureau or something like that,
a lot of
has now come up with their Stockton Stocks Full of Flavor thing, with the Stockton with the TOs transverse, whatever in the name. So anyway. That was my main topics that I wanted to begin the show with, which was the stock market and Tower Up. Now, I do want to mention, and we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to do a whole show on this eventually, but I'm not about money, and we don't want to talk too much about it. We don't want to sound like NPR and bring in a bunch of nationally famous people that are 80 years old to talk about something just for the sake of raising money. But remind us what we're trying to do with the Tower Up fundraising.
For the Tower Up, we're trying to raise money for... to basically get on the FM dial. It takes a little bit of change if people don't know what that is. But to be up and broadcasting, we have to reach our goal, which we want to get our own antenna and basically get our own tower, and don't have to pay for rent from a tower, because we want to have a place where it'll be there and it'll be broadcast throughout the whole city of Stockton.
And be in control of our own destiny.
Yes. And
also the advantage here is if you actually have a real FM radio station number on the dial and everything, then it's easier. In this modern age, you can do almost anything with anything. Mm-hmm. But I think it's still a little bit intuitively easier for people who are driving around to tune in a radio station with an FM number than maybe to try to program it into their
phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I'm not sure. I could be wrong about that, but. So anyway, what's so significant people need to know is we already have the broadcast license.
Yes, we do.
We have the authorization. We have to make it happen by getting a tower constructed and putting it on the air with a transmitter.
Yeah, and actually this past Tower Up will be our last Tower Up for a while. But the big thing coming up is Christmas in July, Summer Wonderland, and that is going to be July 22nd right over by Eden Park at the Philomathian.
Oh, that's
which is another historic
place
in Stockton we need to talk about one day.
And we have great connections.
Yes.
KXVS does to the Philomathian. We'll make sure. What we're going to do is we're going to include the Philomathian Club. I'm going to have theme shows eventually.
Okay, awesome.
It takes a while to develop this stuff.
You're still building up, Nate.
But we'll have theme shows, and one of them will probably be like great buildings in Stockton, and then we'll have the Philomathian Club.
Awesome.
One of the things I'm going to preview, I'm not going to go into it. It won't be the show tonight, but I'll preview what our all-transportation show would be about. I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, one night a couple of weeks ago at one of the Tower Ups, we talked about transportation.
Right. But I'll have a whole show. But transportation is so much like any particular subject. If you really get into it, there's a lot more there than people realize. And so I'll give you a hint about that in a little bit. One of the things I'm going to talk about today, now I want to make sure we hit the good news and the exciting stuff first and talked about why Stockton is alive. But now that we've done that, I do want to talk briefly about what kind of some kind of rather stunning developments here on the Miracle Mile. I'm not going to get in a huge controversy here tonight, but I will give the listeners and viewers a little brief rundown of what has occurred that people may know from Stockton record headlines and word of mouth. There was one particular landowner whose collection of kind of adjoining buildings was rather suddenly shut down by the fire department. Was that a week ago Tuesday? I forgot what day.
A week ago, I believe.
I think they had to evacuate Tuesday and then were shut down. I think they were shut down on Tuesday.
It was a week ago. No, it was a week ago. Not Wednesday.
Wednesday, and then they had to vacate within 3 days for their belongings. So anyway,
not this past week.
Among the things we lost, for the time being anyway, we lost the Impresso Coffee Shop and the beautiful historic Art Deco lounge and luxurious lounge of the former Stockton Royal Theater, which is virtually half a block from here. Mm-hmm. Then we lost the Serendipity Salon Shop. We lost a place. It was a real estate place. I'm trying to remember the name now. I had it in my head when I walked in. Anyway, I lost a real estate office. We lost Central, which was a pretty significantly noted cafe and lounge and restaurant, although the word is that they were going to move.
Yes, that's what I heard too.
So we didn't necessarily lose them just because of this, but it was something of a premature shutdown without a chance for a farewell transition. Mm-hmm. Now, they have a new location. I don't know if it's open.
It's by Brookside.
Brookside, right. And sitting here as an advocate of downtown, the Miracle Mile, I can't say as I want Central to do well. I don't want the owners to be hurt. I hope they do well, but them being in Brookside isn't very exciting to me here. It's sitting in the Miracle Mile, okay. And it so happens, my wife and I, remember I have my Peruvian party wife, Becky. We actually went to Central quite a few times, actually. So we lost them, and we lost Gusty Wings is another one, which was great chicken and chicken wings and French fries, and I don't remember what else they had there, but they had some great stuff there. I know when the Whiskey Barrel was still without their kitchen, and they were allowing people to bring food in. My wife had a great happy hour there one time by bringing Gusty Wings food in, and we really enjoyed it. So we lost them, and then Casa Flores. Now, of course, when you speak of Casa Flores, there's I don't know, in all of Greater Northern California, I want to say there's about 14 of them now, but they actually originated from a family that worked in the original Cancun downtown, before they built the Cineplex, before Cancun moved into what was the Chase Chevrolet building in downtown Stockton. And this family then went out and started their own restaurants. And as a matter of fact, the Downtown Comeback Club, which I'll speak about probably in some detail in my next show, is actually hosting its Thursday morning weekly breakfast meetings in the dining room area of the Casa Flores downtown, which is on the corner of Weber and San Joaquin. I'm sorry, Weber and Hunter, across the street from the new and old courthouse. But anyway, so that happened. I'll give you without going into a lot of any controversial details, I'll tell you essentially what happened. Was the Stockton Royal Theater was phasing itself out of business as a first-run movie theater within about, say, a year of the opening of the downtown Cineplex, which originally was Signature Theaters. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it was, what is it? What's the name of the theater? I forgot the name of the company that runs the theater.
Regal.
Yeah, Regal. So I was okay. I had that right then. Originally opened as Signature Theaters, and within 9 or 10 months, it became Regal Theaters. And Regal Theaters also was running the Holiday something or other.
Holiday 8 on West Lane.
Right? Thank you, on West Lane. And when Regal took over, I think the people running the Royal decided that might be too strong a competition. And they were at that point 4 theaters, one main theater and 3 smaller ones. So they were something of a Cineplex. And actually, for anyone that doesn't remember this, the Art Deco lounge that was Impresso Coffee used to be circular and used to go all the way around. And now it's half of it.
Yeah, you could tell from the ceiling.
Yeah. But anyway, so the last movie I saw was a James Bond movie, by the way.
Was it Pierce Brosnan?
It was Pierce Brosnan, yes. I think it was the one Tomorrow Never Dies with the newspaper headlines, but I can't remember for sure. But anyway, actually, no, it was one before that. It was the one where this guy turned defective and became a Russian or something. I don't know. But anyway, so anyway, apparently when the gentleman, the landowner, remodeled to convert what was then theater number 3 or 4, which is on the southwest part of the theater complex, which is where you would now have Central and the Catalyst was the name of the real estate, Catalyst Real Estate, and the Gusty Wings, and there was also at one time I forgot the original name, the Martini Bar or something like that was the original bar that was there. I don't remember what the more current one was called because I never got into it, but there was a bar there also. But anyway, that's the area. That was one of the areas they remodeled and repurposed, is the term they use now, from a theater into these independent businesses. Apparently, right off the bat from the remodeling, there was some disputes between the landowner and the city of Stockton over certain codes that were or were not met in relation to plumbing and electrical, and certain things with the roof and some other things. And eventually, now there's also been pointed out quite fairly that the tenants also were not exactly doing a great job of honoring important electrical codes and plumbing and other various things. So the city had been after this at some time, and this is what I'm telling you has been reported in the Stockton Record, so I'm not breaking any news here and I'm not being controversial. Apparently 4 years ago, this gentleman signed an agreement that there were some things were going to be done, and then that didn't all happen. So the city decided, and I think what partially led to the sudden closure was the city is now facing some liability issues over the awful pallet fire on East Weber Avenue. Mm-hmm. And since a lot of what they were concerned about here was fire department and fire codes, I think they were worried.
And the day before they got shut down, there was the Mayfair Hotel Apartments fire.
That's right. So. Which had been mistakenly identified briefly on Facebook and scared me into being the Eden Park building with a new ice cream shop and some other stuff. Not that I want to choose one building over the other, by the way. The Mayfair, I've always admired the Mayfair building. As a person who walks downtown and rides the bus all the time, I go by both of those places. I just actually walked right by there today on the way here to the show. But I feel terrible for the Mayfair. But anyway, thank God no one was really even seriously hurt, apparently, in the Mayfair fire.
Yeah, then there was a fire yesterday at the old Western Depot
building.
I
just heard that. I haven't seen it, but that's probably the final straw for that building, which we would talk about when we do the transportation show. And I've been in all three of Stockton's train stations when they were still owned and operated by the private railroad companies, when they all still had passenger trains, in an era long before Amtrak. But anyway, so what's really difficult here is, while it's understandable to an extent why the city did things and why they did so suddenly.
Oh, sorry, real quick. They also were scared of the Oakland fire a couple months ago because the
Ghost Ship fire. Yes.
Yeah, the Ghost Ship fire,
That's
where the owner faced 36 counts of manslaughter.
And if a city doesn't prove they made reasonable efforts to enforce codes, and then something bad happens, the city's any government agency is always liable for just about anything. One thing I can tell you, I've worked for the private sector and I've worked for public supported businesses like I do now. If you're in a government-supported business, it's assumed you have deep pockets. It's assumed that if you get a proper a really strong, hard-core lawsuit against you, you're going to wind up paying a bunch of money, and no one cares that that's the taxpayers' money. So government entities are heavily liable at times, and they become nervous because of that, which is one reason why you have so much bureaucracy. But the frustrating thing here was the businesses did not know they were going to be shut down. The city apparently legally didn't feel like they could talk to the tenants, and they expected the landowner to let them know this was coming, and that wasn't as forthcoming maybe as it might have been. I don't know. I'm only telling you. I'm not pulling any judgment here. So the businesses, literally, fire department people. I don't know if police were there or not, but fire department people actually literally walked and said, "You will shut down your business immediately, no warning, and you'll vacate in 3 days."
Yeah, the fire marshal.
The fire marshals. Yes, thank you.
That's what I heard also.
Now, one of our very own KXVS hosts has already formed a voluntary meeting of the displaced tenants who, to my partial astonishment, are still willing to go back to their spaces right away if they can be brought to code and they can come to terms with the landowner. And again, I'm not want to say too much because I don't know exactly who knows what about this, and I don't want to be breaking news that shouldn't be broken. But there is going to be a follow-up meeting very, very soon between the landowner and the tenants. And it sounds like there's going to be a serious attempt made to kind of put some of this back together again. I don't know about the Impresso coming back, but there's a chance Casa Flores could come back, the Serendipity Salon, the Catalyst Real Estate. Those would come back if the opportunity presents itself. And if it all happens, and I'll let this person take full credit when the time is appropriate, but one of our very own KXVS radio hosts is making all this happen. So, in other words, KXVS is the voice of Stockton, and these people here really, really put it out there for you.
And you can listen to that show tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, moving along from that, let me just run by the complexity that you have to legally run a restaurant or a hot food beverage business in any kind of industrialized community. And I'm just reading these off the top of my head. This is not a complete list, and it's probably not 100% accurate how I'm going to say it. But if you want to run a restaurant, you got to worry about these things. You have to have a special hood and vent if you're going to have honest-to-goodness grilled food or boiled food or fried food. You have to have the special vent. This is not cheap. These vents go for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 or something like that. And well, I don't know. I might be confusing that with the grease trap. The vent might be $10,000 or $15,000. The grease trap. A grease trap is a special drain you have that comes off your grill and your vent and your stove and your oven that takes grease and properly puts it into the sewer system.
And the most common fire in a kitchen is?
Grease fire.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to put out, by the way, which is why restaurants scare fire departments. Because, in fact, the Mayfair was apparently some kind of kitchen fire in one of the apartments.
Wow.
So, in fact, I guess the guy's kitchen blew up, and that started the whole thing. And fortunately, he was dragged out by a neighbor.
Yeah,
he then knocked on some doors, and even though it was really quick fire department response, apparently this one guy maybe has saved dozens of lives.
I believe former Marine also. So
there you go. So anyway, You got the hood and the vent, and it also includes special ventilators and fans and everything. And there's special grease traps within the hood and the vent. Then you got the actual grease trap sewer device, which is underneath the restaurant, attached to the street, if I'm not mistaken, to the mainline sewer system. Those go for about $25,000. You got to worry about the occupancy limit. You know, most of you will notice that there's an occupancy sign in almost any public place now. It tells how many people can legally be in there at one time. You got to have special emergency exits, special lighted emergency signs that have to come on when there's no power. They have to have emergency power. So I guess some kind of batteries. That's the real hardcore safety stuff from the fire. And I know I left a lot of stuff out. You have to have suppression. I think some restaurants have to have suppression fire sprinklers, but water alone is not the deal here because we're talking about grease and oil. You have to have special chemical sprays and special the fire apparatus you hold in your hand and spray things with, fire extinguisher. Now, in addition to that, you got the health things. You've got the general cleanliness of the restaurant. There's very strict rules about how you wash dishes, either in a machine or manually. Most people don't know, for example, you don't dry dishes.
No.
When you wash dishes in a restaurant, they have to drip dry. You don't touch them because the towel could be worse than the food that was on them in the first place.
I've seen kitchen nightmares.
And I've worked in restaurants, so I know all this personally. One time I put my hand down like this. I put my hand down on a tomato slicer.
Ooh. Do you have the scar from that still?
No, my hand perfectly healed, but I had red stripes for about
What kind of restaurants did you work in, Nate?
I worked in chain restaurants, and I worked in a place called the Sheepherders Inn out in Folsom and Sunrise in Sacramento that seated something like 250 people in a huge wooden-spired dining room, and then they had 2 banquet rooms in addition to that, and they were full 4 or 5 nights a week at that time. It was a Basque restaurant, 7-course meals. So I was a bus person, but in a fancier restaurant like that, a bus person does all the work. The waiter smiles, takes the order, makes sure they cook it right.
Hostess takes you to the seat, yeah.
Right, but you do all the delivery of all the food, and you bust the tables, you bring out the water and the coffee and all that stuff, and I dropped a crystal glass one time. It shattered in about 1,000 pieces.
Wow.
I spent almost 45 minutes trying to pick it up with wet paper towels. Because we're not only trying to get off the floor, we don't want people to step on it and get cut. Or let alone the help, by the way. So anyway, you got the dishwashing. Then you got all kinds of plumbing rules for the sink and the dishwasher and the drainage of the sink. And then you've got, generally speaking, very strict restroom rules. And most restaurants have a restroom, and therefore they got strict rules about that. Then you've got all kinds of regulations about your refrigeration. You have to have a special, I know they have to be at a certain degree for refrigeration and a certain degree for freezing. I want to say freezing is like 29 degrees or something like that. There's some safety parameters
Health
on
inspector,
that.
yeah.
Right.
Then you have to meet OSHA guidelines. Yeah.
Right, OSHA guidelines, how things are laid out, and then you have to be able to clean the floors every night. The floors have to have a certain time. You have to have a certain drain in the kitchen area so you can drain everything. And the drain, of course, is hooked up to the grease trap or whatever, I guess.
And if you're a restaurant that sells alcohol, too, you have to meet those standards.
Yeah, and then you've got food storage rules, and you've got cooking temperature rules. The stoves you have to prove you're cooking your hamburgers and your fish and stuff at a certain temperature. And then you've got containerization rules about how you store the food, either cold or dry and or wet and or refrigerated or room temperature. And then you've got expiration dates on food particularly, but I suppose alcohol may have it too. I don't know. So all those things go into play when you're running a restaurant. On top of that, you got to buy perishable food and hope you sell it. And I can't imagine what the utility bill must be at some restaurants. All the gas and electricity you're
depending what time you open, what time you close.
Right, and what kind of meals you do. But nevertheless, you got to fire up the grill. I mean, if you have a restaurant, you have a grill of some kind.
Yeah, gas
and
usually.
Sometimes an oven. Yeah, usually gas. So all those things go into just running a restaurant. So with that having been said, we've covered most of the key things. Now what I'll do is give you a preview of what would be in a transportation show.
And if you don't know this, Nate works in transportation.
Well, yes, and still do, and kind of been around it all my life. And there's even a story about why I'm involved with it, but that's, again, for that show. But transportation, when you say that, people think, oh, yeah, highways and roads and airplanes. Okay.
Trains, planes, and automobiles.
Trains, planes, automobiles.
Starring John Candy
This
and
is
Steve.
what we will cover in our KXVS Stockton Alive show on transportation. There's wagons, as in horse-drawn wagons. There's stagecoaches. There's river boats. There's street railways, which included horse cars and electric trolleys, and eventually buses like RTD operates. Then you've got railroads, freight and passenger, and all kinds of different kinds of freight. You've got airplanes. Now, airplanes can be commercial aircraft, airlines, jets, turboprops, little Cessna planes or Piper planes, which my brother's a pilot, and I used to fly in and out of Stockton Airport in little planes occasionally.
Okay.
Which I don't need to do again, by the way.
I have a fear of little planes. I don't know if you have that too.
I didn't until my brother intentionally put us into a stall at about, I don't know, 15 or 18,000 feet.
Okay, yeah. Remind me not to fly with your brother.
And he says, "I'm going to warn you guys. I'm going to put this in a stall just to show you how you come out of a stall if your engine goes out, and just show how tough these little planes are." By the way, have you ever been on a Cessna?
No, but I know
the doors
people
are
have.
about this. I mean, they're paper thin.
Yeah, I've seen them up and close.
And yeah, so and anywhere you're sitting in a small plane, you're next to the wall, basically.
Yes.
Which is next to nothing.
It's like 4 seats and they're all small.
So when you go into a stall, you're climbing at a steep rate to get the thing into a stall. What you do is you're climbing, then you shut the engine off. Huh? I didn't really enjoy the engine being shut off too much.
As soon as you heard the...
Watching the propeller slow down and stop really didn't do a lot for me.
It's like a movie, right?
But the worst part is, and no one knows until they've been in it, because the plane is designed to fly level at a certain speed with the propeller going and the air wash over the wings and all that, when it doesn't have that, it starts vibrating like it's going to tear itself to pieces. So here you are at 15, 20,000 feet, and the thing is shuddering and groaning and moaning and creaking, and the windows are rattling, and you think the door's going to fly open, you're going to fall outside, and it's kind of rocking and rolling and shaking, and then you literally go over the top of the mountain like you're on a roller coaster, and you start pointing down, and yes, you do hear
Where was this at?
Well, this is somewhere over Ripon, maybe. I don't know. This was right here. I mean, it was out of the Stockton Airport.
Over a mountain?
And he says, "Okay, I'm going to turn the engine on now." He does, and the propeller, much to my immense relief, the propeller kicked in, the engine kicked on. He brought us right out of it. The other thing he loved to do was what they call a 90-degree turn.
Oh.
A 90-degree turn is when you turn the plane so you're pretty much balanced on the tip of the wing. I really don't need to do that ever again either. So you got all these different kinds of airplanes, and you got the Stockton Airport, and you got airports. You got railroad stations. We mentioned the Western Pacific Station, which has had nothing but bad luck for I don't know how long now. You've got now Amtrak. You've got Greyhound. You had Greyhound stations. Yep. I used to work for Trailways, which is a national competitor to Greyhound. They used to have a station in Stockton.
We have Ace, too.
And now we have Ace, which is at the Cabral Station, which was the Southern Pacific Station. So all these things we're going to be able to talk about. And then one day we'll talk about the Delta King. And I have to be careful, I know, with visuals here. I know we don't play music here, or copyrighted music. But, and I won't, when I talk about Delta King, I may not show any real photos from inside this book. I just want you to know, though, I have this great book about the Delta King. This is an autographed book, which I bought at the bookstore. It used to be legendary here on the Miracle Mile.
Nice.
The Maxwell's bookmark. So, and the author was there. I had all kinds of material to talk about that today if we needed to. But so we got, and the Delta King, by the way, is the brother ship of the Delta Queen. You're just young enough to not realize the importance of that. The Delta Queen sailed on the Mississippi River after its Sacramento, Stockton, San Francisco career was over, and was probably the most famous riverboat in the world for about 40 years. And
that's the one you always see on.
Yeah, and it was finally shut down because of wooden hull regulations. We think actually the owners were finally losing money and kind of were looking at an excuse and didn't fight it. It had had 40 years of exemptions from the rule, but now there's a group trying to restore it, bring it back, and they're trying to get, and they've got the bill in Congress now to exempt this ship from being an overnight steamboat with a wooden superstructure.
Awesome.
The hull is actually iron. They finally put a modern hull on it actually in 1998 or something. Actually, they just covered the old hull. But anyway, and there's also an amazing thing on these things called a steam calliope. Whether we can legally show a video on that or not, I'm not sure. Whether we'd be allowed to play the music, I'm not sure. But if we can do it, we'll do it. But a calliope is, I think I talked about this the last show or a previous show before that, is like a pipe organ, except there's steam coming out of it. You can not only hear the thing play, you can see it play because the puffs of steam are coming. It's the most amazing sound. And by the way, the Delta King and Queen were made in Stockton. That's one reason we talk about them. Not just they were Northern California riverboats and the last great riverboats running in America. They were made in Stockton, and they cost $1 million a piece each in $1925. So we have, and that's just one of many theme shows. We'll talk about some of the other theme shows in an upcoming episode. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Stay cool, stay chilled out. Tune in to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, and you that's what we talked about today. We talked about Stockton and all the great things.
This has been Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knodt.